All right. So, who's ever seen this show, The Masked Magician? Okay, anybody like magic? Yeah, it's kind of neat, right? So, in this show, and this guy started going on kind of like mainstream TV, and he would basically show you the magic trick, but then he'd walk you through like how they did it. So you got to like peek behind the curtain to see that it really wasn't magic; it was just an illusion. And so, like, he has some strings in his hands tied to his mouth, and it makes it look like the can is floating, but in all reality, he's just holding it with some string. So it's just kind of walking you through like how you're being tricked. Now, when it comes to like stuff like this, like we think that it's okay, the deceitfulness that's going on because it's in the name of entertainment. It's just like good fun. But who likes being lied to? Raise your hand if you like being deceived. Well, that's one of the main things that's happening in our current healthcare system today. Is there's deceit going on, and they put this out there like it's for the good of our health, but it's really about the profits. And so I want to talk about the history of the medical creation, like the creation of why we have this current system, why it's in play, and how did it get started. Has anybody ever heard of the Flexner report before? Okay, this is something that I think every single high school should teach this, but for sure medical schools should teach this, and they just don't. They don't know the history of their own profession, and most people don't know the history of the medical profession. So I'm going to go into this. I want you to guys just really think about the incentives here. So the 1910 Flexner report was created by this guy named Flexner, whose job, so he was hired by the Carnegie Foundation, which was partnered with the AMA, the American Medical Association, to try to create standards in medical practice, which kind of makes sense. Like, if you have all these medical people out there, like, you want them to have standards, like, you want them to like deliver good care, because we're talking about early 1900s. Like, they were still bloodletting back then. Now, that was medical care, and that was part of the medical paradigm, was the bloodlet, which we look back on and think of that was just ridiculous, but that was what they were doing. So the goal of this report was to go to all these medical schools and basically look at their curriculum, look what they were creating, and then start moving them to better, higher standards. So that sounds good. Yes or yes? Okay. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Okay. What the report really did is it ostracized any other form of healthcare that was not petroleum-based pharmaceutical. So John Rockefeller, who was an oil tycoon, he was the richest person in the United States. Okay, he funded these programs to go into these medical schools to create these very specific standards that would allow those practices to practice medicine, pharmacology-based medicine. Okay, so you'd go to these different colleges, and they basically says you don't follow our standards, and so we're not going to give you any funding. You're not going to be able to license your graduating physicians, and so they won't be able to practice healthcare. They will be denied. And it's really interesting when you think about all the things that happened and how, gosh, I mean, you got to give them credit, because what they did worked, and it was insanely complicated. But the idea was that they could control the treatment in healthcare if they changed the paradigm in the colleges. So if they could reform the schools and to be able to create and focus on this sort of practice, and that's what the practice will happen in mainstream. So if you were a homeopathic school, a naturopathic school, an elective college, if you were a chiropractic college, an osteopathy, so DO school, if you didn't meet these requirements, then you basically couldn't graduate doctors. So when they went in and they looked at these reports, and so if you weren't doing insanely expensive laboratory testing, if you didn't have petroleum-based pharmaceutical treatments, you just didn't get accreditation. In fact, when these people were still practicing, they would get arrested for practicing medicine without a license. In fact, back then, chiropractors were getting jailed by the hundreds for practicing medicine without a license. Now, I get really sick to my stomach when someone uses the word chiropractic medicine, because what I do is not medicine. Medicine is a thing you give someone to treat an ailment. And typically when you think of medicine, you think of drugs, okay? what we were doing was not practicing medicine. We were basically treating the sick. We were helping people improve their health. So the biggest problem with this report and what it created is it monopolized healthcare. It made it to where anybody who was helping someone sick get arrested because they were not practicing what they would call standard medicine. And it was insane because it literally ruined your ability to go seek out what kind of healthcare you wanted. In fact, people would show up to these jails in the hundreds to try to get their chiropractor out of jail. It's really pretty cool stories. So, but that is this monopoly created to where you could not seek out other healthcare. It just made it a one thing. So it was not a free market. It wasn't about trying to, like, again, when they were, trying to look at, like, how do we treat these patients and best health outcomes, the report, this guy going around didn't say, hey, you guys are doing these things. This is the quality of people you're creating, doctors you're putting out in the field. This is the results that you're getting. It had nothing to do with that. It had only to do with these specific criteria. In fact, Flexner was not even a medical doctor. He was an educator. His job was to look at secondary educations and help create curriculums. But Andrew Carnegie in Rockefeller's basically paid this guy to go to all these schools to just eliminate. There was 155 different health colleges. I hate the word medical colleges because they weren't medical. They were healthcare colleges. But the word medical and healthcare are so interchangeable, makes me sick. It's not the practice of medicine. It's like treating the ill. It was being a physician and helping people get well. But they just basically made it to where it is 100% allopathic, pharmaceutical based, and it was one of the biggest financial investments that they ever made. And now it takes up 18% of the gross national income. It's like $18 trillion a year that this system creates. And the goal was not to get people healthy. It was to basically make money on the sick. And that's why there's no cures. There's no money in cures. So all these herbalists, these naturopaths, all these people who are helping people get well, the pharmaceutical industry that basically governed these schools that were giving grants to practice this sort of medicine, you couldn't patent herbs. You couldn't patent something that was natural. So they didn't allow you to do that and treat people with that because there's no financial incentive. The financial is from these expensive laboratory tests, these expensive hospitals, these expensive medical interventions. That's where the money is. And so it's just following the money. The entire thing was created so they could take advantage of the ill and bill them for the rest of their life. In fact, in some instances, they call this not a healthcare system, but a wealth extraction system. The number one cause of bankruptcy right now in the United States is medical bills. It's insanely expensive. Medications are insanely expensive, especially here in the United States. And then one of the reasons I want to talk about this specifically is because if it worked, then that would be one thing. But is it really working? No. We're one of the sickest countries in the industrialized world. We have more heart disease, more cancers, more diabetes than any other country in the entire world. We make up 5% of the world's population, 5%, and we consume 85% of the world's pharmaceuticals. We have more doctors, more hospitals, more higher paid doctors, more expensive hospitals, the most expensive testing anywhere in the world, but yet we have one of the worst health outcomes that there are. So is our current medical system working to create health? Now I'm gonna stop. We have a really good a really good crisis care system. This is not a thing where I'm just bashing medicine or bashing medical doctors. There are some really great medical doctors, and they're good people. And in a crisis situation, it can absolutely save your life. So I'm not saying that there's not a time and place for medical intervention. When my kid broke her arm, we went to the ER, and she did get some pain meds. I don't think we really took some of them, but because it didn't hurt a lot. But I got them. If I broke my arm and I was in a 10 out of 10 pain, I'll probably take some medications, right? Everybody agree with that? But it's just to help you get to a point where you're out of pain so the body can heal. It's not something you get put on forever, right? If you get in a car accident and you're squirting blood out of your aorta, don't come here, okay? Go to the hospital, go to the ER. They're going to save your life in a crisis. That is incredible care. And science and technology has come so way. So there's a lot of benefits from the Flexner report. But the problem is that it's now adopted as our healthcare system, insurance care system, treatment system, not cure system, and it's created one of the sickest cultures in the entire world. So there has to be a division. Would you all agree that there should be a difference between healthcare and sick care? Even if they just change the name to disease management care instead of calling it healthcare, I think it would be a huge step in the right direction because it's a paradigm shift. Right? If we just shift the way that people are thinking about where they should go for what ailments they have, then I think it would solve a lot of the problems. So the first thing I want you guys to understand is that it's not healthcare. It is sick care. It is disease management. If you have diabetes and you go to the medical doctor, what will you always have? Diabetes. Now, this is what's really crazy. So on intake forms, when someone comes in the clinic, you have to fill out like certain things like what else you have going on, like other medical conditions. And it blows my mind that someone would put this. But like they're on 3 different blood pressure medications, but they put no for hypertension. Like I don't have high blood pressure, but I'm on 3 medications for it. Why did they say that? Because what's their blood pressure? It's normal. If I tested their blood pressure, it would show normal regulation, right? So in their mind, they don't have high blood pressure, but yet they're on 3 different medications. Again, that is an issue with how they're thinking about it, correct? And how long do they take that medication for? Forever, because there's no getting you better. It's simply treating the disease. In fact, this is what's insane to me too. Let's say you went to the doctor and you had high blood pressure or diabetes, and the doctor sat down, or let's say he did a seminar like this and he taught you like all this stuff to actually like increase insulin sensitivity so your blood sugar was normal, right? Because if your body regulated your insulin at 100%, can you have diabetes? No, if your body regulates your blood sugar at 100%, then it's impossible to have diabetes because that's what it is. It's dysfunction. If you could remove the word disease to dysfunction, again, it helps us understand so much more about what this is going on. But their goal isn't to do that. It's to simply treat your symptom, and you're going to get that system treated forever because that's what's profitable. Okay, so first off, again, paradigm shift. It's not about healthcare, it's about disease management. And sometimes it might be necessary for disease management in a certain situation. Like if you went in the doctor and your blood pressure was 300 and you're about to stroke out, you should probably take a drug, right? But then what should you do? Maybe find out why your body is expressing that symptom. But that's where they stop. They don't do that. It's not about getting you well. It's that here's your drug and you're going to take it for the rest of your life. So it's not a healthcare system. It's a disease management system, and it started with that. So I want to get right into the lies of medicine. Okay, so first, bamboozled. The U.S. has an excellent healthcare system, and you need to trust the experts. All right, heart disease, cancer kills 650,000 people, 720,000 people every single year. Are they huge deals? I mean, that's a lot of people, yes? 720,000 people every single year die from heart disease. That's 1 out of 2 men, it's 1 out of 2 women die from heart disease. 1 out of 2 men will get cancer, 1 out of 3 women will get cancer currently, right now in the United States. Cancer is supposed to increase another 75% by 2030. Big deals, yes? Okay. Do you guys know what the number 1 cause of death in the United States is? Car accidents? No, not even close. Like 50,000 people die a year from car accidents. So there's one specific thing called iatrogenesis. Who's ever heard of that before? Iatrogenesis, iatrogenic death. It kills about 1 million people a year. 1 million people a year die from iatrogenesis. And you've never heard of this before? So like obviously like you want to try, do you guys currently practice things that help you avoid heart disease? Right? Do you guys currently practice things that help you avoid cancer? I would hope so, because those are really scary things. Who's ever had someone die from cancer in their life? Raise your hand. Let me see. Yeah, it's like everybody. Everybody knows someone close to them that probably died from cancer and or heart disease. I mean, it just is what it is. So hopefully if you've seen someone really suffer through something like that, like my mom died from lung cancer, right? She smoked for 40 years. Guess what I don't do? Yeah, because it was friggin' miserable to watch her die from cancer. Okay? So if you don't know what the number 1 cause of death is, how are you supposed to avoid it? So I want you to think what 1 million people a year is. 1 million people a year is like if 6 jumbo jets crashed every single day. If 6 jumbo jets crashed every single day, would you ever get on a plane? No, in fact, would the airlines really be in business? No, if they would shut it down. That's unacceptable. That is unacceptable. Even if like 1 plane crashed every month, unacceptable. 1 plane crashed every year would be unacceptable. Like, you still wouldn't get on a plane. You would drive to Florida and not fly, even though it takes 24 hours to drive there. You just would not get on a plane. Iatrogenesis is death induced by medical intervention. The number one cause of death currently in the United States, iatrogenesis, is death induced by medical intervention. It's the number one cause of injury. It's the number one cause of death. There was a book called Death by Medicine, three medical doctors, a couple PhDs with over 300 peer-reviewed articles published this book, walking you through the instances of this iatrogenic death. They're not even hiding it. When you watch a commercial, what's most of the commercial about? Side effects. Like, you have dry, itchy eyes, take this drug, but you might bleed out of your butt. Yeah. Right? Like, oh my gosh, like, please, like, let me just deal with the dry, itchy eyes. Right? So, is it safe? Is it effective? The fact that millions of people share the same vices does not make them virtues. The fact that they share so many errors does not make the errors to be truths. The fact that millions of people share the same form of mental pathology does not make these people sane. Just because this is what the vast majority of people think does not mean that it's true. When you find yourself on the side of the majority, you need to do what? Pause and reflect. And what is the definition of insanity? It is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. So right now, 5 out of 6 people die from heart disease and cancer. Over 70% of people over 60 have 1 to 3 chronic illnesses. 1 out of 4 children today are on a chronic medication they'll take for the rest of their life. If autism follows its current trend, it'll be 1 out of 2 by 2030. In fact, when I was a kid, it was like 1 out of 1,500. Now in Oklahoma, I just saw something, it was 1 out of 13. So if we don't do something radically different, how is it not going to happen to you, your kids, your grandkids, everybody that you love? If we don't do something different, we will end up in the exact same situation like everybody else. True or true? FDA approved means safe. Right? Okay. Remember when they used to say smoking was good for you? It was good for weight loss. It was good for your throat. It was great for your digestive system. Yeah, medical doctors used to recommend smoking. Now we know that that's a lie. But that's what they used to say. You guys remember Vioxx? Vioxx was touted as a miracle drug to help with joint pain. And so it's a COX-2 inhibitor, so it blocks a specific enzyme that's linked to inflammation. Sounds good, right? Okay. Well, it also blocks your blood's ability to thin. So when you take this COX-2 inhibitor, it stops the blood from thinning, and so you get really thick blood. And what it ended up doing is it killed over 100,000 people, heart attacks and strokes. Killed over 100,000 people. Do you guys remember the Vioxx thing? You guys remember that? 100,000 people died. For those of you that haven't heard it, doesn't it blow your mind that you haven't? Like, shouldn't you know? Like, shouldn't you know about iatrogenesis? Like, it's the number one cause of death. 1 million people a year. You should know about that. It boggles my mind that people don't know about it. You know who does? Lawyers. Every time I have a lawyer in the room, they're like, I know what that is. Because they're the ones who are suing companies for injuries, right? Wrongful deaths, things like that. Like my grandma went to the hospital, had to have a hip replacement. She died from complications 6 months later. She would not have died if she would not have had surgery. Most cancer patients die from treatment, not the cancer. Right? So about this, like Vioxx, so it kills 100,000 people with strokes because of thickening of the blood. It took a whistleblower named David Graham to finally stop people from dying and pull this off the market by leaking internal documents that showed that Merck knew about the diagnosis side effects and knew that people would die or get injured. They had to pay out $5 billion on personal injuries. $5 billion. A lot of money, yeah? They made 10. Who, if you won the lottery for $10 billion and you had to pay back 5, who's cool with that? Would everybody take that? So would the pharmaceutical companies. It's like doing business. You guys might know this parallel. This happens with car insurance, like car companies. When they find a problem in a car, like an issue that would cause problems, wrecks or whatever, it's just a simple math equation. They look at how much it's going to cost for recalls versus how much it's going to cost for payouts. And they just make the decision based off the number. It has nothing to do with people and safety. It has to do with numbers. Does it cost me more to recall, or does it cost me more just to pay it out? Just like the pharmaceutical companies. They knew it was going to injure people, but they knew they were going to make $10 billion. So what's the problem with paying back $5? It's a $5 billion profit margin. So again, can we trust them? Medical research, there was another study that they did where they looked at the vast majority of medical literature that medical doctors are getting fed, because like medical doctors just get told what to do. Like they follow that system that was created by the Rockefellers and the Carnegie Foundation, that Flexner report. They follow. They have very specific things that they have to learn to graduate, and they have to practice within certain things. I was going to say this, and I think I skipped it, but if you went to the doctor with like high blood pressure or cancer, and they sat you down, did a seminar like this, and they taught you how to get healthy, like by nutrition and exercise or getting adjusted. If they told you to get adjusted and they did not give you a drug, do you know that they would lose their license? Malpractice. That is not the standard. If they don't follow the standard, if they go outside of the standard, they are not practicing what the AMA, the governing bodies, tell them what they have to do. And so they'll lose their licensure. Because mostly doctors don't do these drugs anyway. They did something where they looked at like 96% of oncologists would never take chemo if they got cancer. But they have to tell you to do it because that's the standard care. They can't tell you anything about nutrition, or they don't. It's just insane. In fact, I'll tell you an experience I had. We were touring the oncology clinic here locally, and we went up there. And this is something that we would do back in the day to like motivate our team to really dig in and understand what we are doing is powerful and that we're there to save lives. So we go and look at like these sick people, like, oh my God, like we can help these people. We can prevent this. So let's go look at it. Let's get motivated by the damage. Okay. So we go in there, and there was it's a pediatric ward, and there was this kid just got done with his chemo treatment, and he was sitting there drinking this big slushie from Sonic. I swear to God, Jill's gonna like jump across there and like smack that nurse. Do you guys know what that's full of? Sugar. What does sugar do to cancer? It's like gasoline on a fire. So he just got done putting this insanely toxic sludge into his bloodstream that the nurses have to wear double thick layer gloves because it gets on their skin, it'll burn a hole in their skin, and they're putting that right into that kid's bloodstream to try to minimize a tumor load. They're poisoning this kid to a point where hopefully he doesn't die, but it gets the cancer down low enough. That's what the goal is. It's to give you enough drugs to not kill you, but to try to get the tumor load down. And as soon as he was done, the kid is just feeding the cancer. Crazy, right? Why would you do that? But again, that's the practice. And so what they found in this study is that 49 articles, 34 of these claims that were basically being told is that 41% had been convincingly showed to be wrong or significantly exaggerated. So the medical literature that these doctors are reading is either wrong or extremely exaggerated. Or it's just lied and manipulated like Merck did with Vioxx, saying that, no, these are really safe. Who remembers the opioid epidemic? Right? Those were supposed to be safe and non-addictive. That was what the pharmaceutical company study showed us, told your doctors it's very safe, it's not addictive, and it injured millions of people. And now we know that it was wrong, right? Just like we know that Vioxx is wrong. Just like we know that bloodletting was a bad idea, okay? So safe or generally accepted as safe, this kind of boggles my mind too. The amount of like chemicals in our food. So here are just some of the chemicals that are allowed by the FDA in our food that are known as generally acceptable as safe, that are absolutely destroying health. And I'll put this on the social media, guys. I'm gonna put a lot of this stuff follows up on our social media, so you can go and read through this stuff. But this is the stuff that you have to recognize to avoid. Like you got to know what these things are, how to read a food label to avoid it. Because if you don't know, you can't avoid it. If parents don't know the damaging effects of yellow dye number 5, yellow 6, red dye, they have no idea. They don't know what it is, but if it's on the shelf, it's got to be safe. I mean, don't you think like if it's on the shelf, if they're giving it to you, it's got to be pretty safe. But that's just not true. We know that these things. In fact, who knows so something that's not on this list is nitrates. Do you guys know what nitrates are? They're like preservatives to like help meat like look good and stay good longer, right? Some sort of preservative. The National Cancer Society published, and this is a long time ago, that nitrates are unfit for human consumption. This is the National Cancer Society saying this. In most of the countries, these things are illegal, but they're like feeding it to us all day long. It's insane how sick this stuff is. So again, you cannot trust just the powers that be. So another thing is they say that like 5 servings of fruits and vegetables are going to help you avoid the doctor. Like that's a pretty good recommendation, yes? Right? I mean, who should be eating fruits and vegetables? Yeah, I mean, that's where the nutrients come from. And here's kind of an idea. There's only 2 causes of disease. And this is a very oversimplification. 2 causes of a disease. Everybody say 2. Deficiency and toxicity. Deficiency and toxicity. Now, there's a lot of subcategories to that, right? You can be deficient in a certain nutrient, an enzyme, some minerals. You can be deficient in oxygen, right? If you aren't moving enough, you're not oxygenating your system. And if a cell becomes 70% deficient in oxygen, what happens to it? It mutates. The metabolism of the cell shifts from a respiratory oxygen using to sugar. So if a cell mutates to use sugar for fuel, guess what that is called? A what kind of cell? A cancer cell. Otto Warburg won a Nobel Prize by discovering that when a cell becomes 70% deficient in oxygen, it mutates into a cancer cell. So if you're not moving, if you're not oxygenating your system, if you're not doing, essential number 4, exercise, you are suffocating your cells, which is leading to cancer. Okay? So if you're deficient in oxygen, if you're deficient in neurological innervation, if you have a subluxation that's choking life off to an organ or a body part, that organ, that body part is going to start to get weak or sick and die early. Now, if you're toxic, again, that is going to create dysfunction, dysregulation, and then eventually disease processes. So that's the overall, again, why like this nutrition stuff is so important, because we have to address things like nutrient deficiencies. The problem is it's more like 11 servings because the nutrient deficiencies in our current food supply. So it's really difficult to get enough fruits and vegetables, yes or yes? Guess who's the number 1 deficient? Adults or kids? Kids are massively deficient. Kids are picky eaters, yes or yes? What kids eat Brussels sprouts? My kids don't eat spinach. No. So we have to supply this or supplement this stuff. And this is one of the reasons why my kids absolutely love like the Max Greens. Every single day they do a protein smoothie with the Max Greens. And you can just see the benefits in there. But there's like 18 organic superfoods, spirulina, chlorella, kale, spinach, and more. There's 5 billion CFUs of probiotics to improve gut health, adaptogens, mushrooms for energy and immune stimulation. And then again, it tastes so much better. Like to eating like 5 bags of spinach to just consuming this Max Green, super easy. And my kids love it. It's like a secret. We call it chocolate milk, right? But they don't know any better. It tastes like chocolate milk. Right? We put some protein in there so we get essential amino acids. It also helps with like weight loss. Protein is incredible for like even like blood sugar regulation. I had a patient who was pre-diabetic, came in because his back hurt, and I'm trying to talk to him about his health. And he's like, I am not changing my nutrition. He was this stubborn old dude, right? Anybody know those guys? But he also wouldn't take medication. But the medical doctor was forcing him to do drugs, and I'm trying to force him to change his lifestyle. And we came to a common ground where he just started doing the protein smoothies in the morning with the greens. That's all he's like, I'll just do the smoothie. I'm not changing anything else. 3 months later, he comes back in and he goes, oh my gosh, I'm no longer pre-diabetic. Because his blood sugar was starting to regulation because he was getting really good, healthy protein first thing in the morning, regulated his insulin levels. Like, it's not difficult. This stuff is not difficult. I mean, how easy it is to drink a smoothie. And I'm not even talking about like to put it in a blender, put a bunch of frozen fruit in there, put some peanut butter in there and blend it up. I'm talking about put it in a shaker bottle, put a little water in it or a little bit of healthy milk, shake it up, drink it down. Super easy, okay? So there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to get all the vitamins and minerals and all the nutrition that we need. Now, I do think we should definitely eat our food, but nobody does it very well, or it's difficult to do. And so an easy way to supplement it is just make sure you're doing something like the Max Greens. That's why this specific supplement is on sale at the seminar, because I think everybody should do it. Like, we just reduce the price to help people afford it. Like, again, that's just what it is. It's trying to ensure that you have nutrients that you need so your body can heal, fight disease. Okay, I want to go through these kind of quick because this just boggles my mind, but I don't want to spend a ton of time on it. But the medical system has turned pregnancy into a disease, which is crazy. Because when you get pregnant, you go to the doctor, they basically diagnose you with pregnancy, And then here comes all the medical interventions that you do. And if medical interventions led to really good health outcomes, then I would be for it. But the United States has one of the highest infant mortality rates in the entire industrialized world. You are more likely to have a baby get sick or a baby die in the United States than the vast majority of other wealthy nations, which boggles my mind. But we have way more medical interventions. We have more ultrasounds, 3D ultrasounds, 4D ultrasounds. We have medications given to mom. We have planned C-sections. We have this cascading event where you go in to a, like, say, someone starts to get pregnant, or maybe they're just not in labor yet, but they're 42 weeks, and the doctor says we have to induce you, right? How many people have heard someone getting induced before? So when you go in and you get induced, they give you this medication that starts your contractions. The problem with that is the contractions are 10 times stronger than if they were to happen naturally. So if the contractions are 10 times stronger, do you think that equals less discomfort or more discomfort for mom? Everyone say more. More. So if the mom has 10 times more discomfort from these contractions than God intended, it's kind of hard not to take a bunch of what? Medications, right? So it's a cascading event. So you get induced, you get this drug, it stimulates these contractions, then you get so bad in pain, you get this shot, because women have been having labor for millennia with no medical intervention, right? That's kind of what God intended you to have. No, I'm a guy, I've never had a baby. I understand that it's very, very painful. My wife went through 3 pregnancies, 1 with twins, and all natural birth. Lots of women have natural birth. Is it hard? Yeah. I'm sorry, that's the burden God put on you. I didn't do that, okay? It can happen, and it's happened for a very, very, very long time. But she also wasn't induced, okay? When you get that shot, then you don't feel it anymore, and then the next step is just, it's emergency C-section. Like, that's just what happens. And I'm not saying that thank God that like C-sections exist, because there's definitely medical situations where the C-section saved the baby or saved mom. I'm not trying to say that there's not a situation. But we have a vast disproportionate amount of C-sections and inductions and complicated pregnancies than anywhere else in the entire world, okay? And when you look at the damaging effects of things like C-sections or suction cups or forceps, the amount of damage on the baby is insane. In fact, a C-section, when you look at, like, if you ever watch it on YouTube or if you've seen it, when they grab the head and pull, twist, get the shoulders to turn, pull it out, I mean, those tables are meant to invert so they can use gravity to pull baby out. And again, sometimes it's an emergency. But my kids weighed like 7.8, right? 7 pounds, 8 ounces, I think was how much my kids, around that, what they all kind of weighed. But like that C-section pull on the skull is upwards of like 60 to 90 pounds. That's crazy. A forceps C-section, even just a doctor just getting the head, helping to turn, like assisted birth, is like 9 pounds. Like, again, like, would I ever let a doctor hold my baby by the head like this? No, like, and that's less than 9 pounds, because that would damage the neck. Now, sometimes you have to get the baby out of there for an emergency situation, but after that happens, wouldn't it make sense that you would check to see if there was a misalignment in the neck that would put pressure on the brainstem? Yeah, I mean, that's why we check so many babies in here, is because we got to make sure that whatever trauma they went through isn't going to cause, later issues down the road. So, in fact, see, they talk about SIDS right here. They did a study where they x-rayed like all these different SIDS babies, like hundreds of these babies that died from SIDS. 99% of them all had a top bone misalignment putting pressure on the brainstem. You guys know what the brainstem's job is for? The nerve system in the brainstem controls what? Yeah, respiratory function. So if there's pressure on the brainstem that would affect respiratory function, well, yeah, if there's interference in communication from the brain to the lungs, and that interference creates dysregulation or dysfunction, well, yeah, of course they might have a hard time breathing. Okay? That's why, again, why so many babies get adjusted here. So when it comes to this sort of stuff, there's this BRAIN acronym: benefits, risks, alternatives, intuition, and what if I do nothing? This is something I want every single one of my patients to really start to use on a regular basis when it comes to healthcare approaches. What are the benefits? What are the risks? What are the alternatives? What's your intuition, Tay? Because we believe that intuition should play a role. And then what if you did nothing? Like, what would happen if you didn't do anything? Okay? So I want to talk about innate versus science. Innate intelligence versus science. So Bill Gates, he was the founder of this company that basically was trying to get people to understand that breast milk is bad, that science breast milk is better. Laboratory grown milk is better. You don't need breast milk. That's not what you need. Babies need formula. Well, on the left, if you guys can read the date, that's 11/2. That's breast milk. The next day, same mom, breast milk. Is there a difference? You guys know what the difference is? Okay. When a baby is sick, virus, bacteria, whatever, the mom's breast has these receptors that sense the saliva that will be able to tell if the baby has an infection. And it will literally change what is in the milk. The mom will put specific antibodies, antiviruses, put in these white blood cells to boost the baby's body immune system so it can fight that off. Because mom's been exposed to so much more, so she has these antibodies, and baby doesn't because baby hasn't been around to grow the immune system. So there's just no immune function there. Can artificial breast milk do that? Can artificial breast milk change overnight what the baby needs? Of course not. Now, I do want to preemptively say that like sometimes breastfeeding is difficult. When we had the twins, my wife had a hard time supplying milk for both kids, and we had to supplement. Now, there's better alternatives than like Bill Gates's like lab-grown breast milk. And if you know someone who has a hard time breastfeeding, or someone who might have a hard time breastfeeding, like there's really specific formulas. Like we make our breast milk. We make our breast milk. And so if there's anybody that you know that would need assistance with that, like we'll go through recommendations. I mean, it's the healthy stuff there is. Now, it's not as good as breast milk, but my wife just couldn't do it, right? Something that I did want to talk about, breastfeeding is natural and it makes moms anti-vaxxers. So this is straight out of the pediatric, like the Academy of Pediatric Medical Journal. So this is straight from the medical profession focusing in pediatrics. It says, in one of medicine's more extraordinary statements, the American Medical Academy of Pediatrics is telling health professionals to stop describing breastfeeding as natural. They want you to stop saying it's natural. It could lead parents down the path of alternative medicine, homeschooling, becoming anti-vaccination. The label gives the impression that breastfeeding is healthier and better, says Jessica, blah, 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 medical department, University of Pennsylvania, who have launched a campaign to stop the positive use of the word natural. So they're trying to say medical doctors, stop saying the word natural because it's going to increase potentially some things that you don't want. When writing this in the Journal of Pediatrics, they say that the term creates unintended consequences, such as being an anti-vaccination. Studies have shown that anti-vaccination sentiment tends to overlap with reliance on and interest in complementary and alternative medicine, skepticism of institutional authority, and the interest in health knowledge, autonomy, and healthy living practices. They don't want you. They were trying to tell these pediatricians, don't use the word natural. Don't tell them that breastfeeding is good for them because it might cause them to have alternative seeking care, healthy practices, or to maybe question the authority when it comes to things like vaccinations. They don't want you to do that stuff because they believe that you're dumb. They want you to think that your body is faulty. They want you to think that medications are normal, disease is normal. That's just what happens. You have to get medications when you're older. That's what the vast majority of people think, is that this stuff is just normal. Getting sick, getting old, getting on medications is just what happens. But that's just not true. That is not true. Your body is fearfully and wonderfully made. Your body is designed to be healthy. Now, if you have nutritional deficiencies, if you have subluxations, if you have a lack of oxygen, if you have toxicity, then yeah, you're probably going to express some symptoms. Right or right? Okay. But instead of getting to those root causes, they just want to pump you full of medications. Menopause is a disease, and then solution is hormone replacement therapy. Again, is menopause a normal process that happens to every single woman? It just happens. It's a part of life. Your hormones change. When you get to a point where your body is no longer going to be able to create babies, your hormones change. Normal process. Now, there are reasons for this process to be exaggerated and have very bad side effects. But the idea is that they're just trying to tell us again that it's a disease process that they can treat. And they treat it with these these synthetic hormones. And so one of the things that they're interesting about these hormones is that the single biggest reduction in breast cancer occurred when doctors stopped prescribing hormone replacement therapy. So these medical doctors were told that hormone replacement therapy was going to reduce your risk of stroke, reduce your risk of being sick, reduce your symptomatology, reduce breast cancer. And what they found is that it increased every one of them. Increase your rate of heart disease, increase your rate of Alzheimer's, increase your risk of death of heart attack or stroke, and it increased breast cancer rates 8% every year you used it. Crazy. Here's what really happens, though. It's a cortisol issue. When you go through these natural declining hormonal changes where estrogen and progesterone start to go down, those two hormones are really the buffer that helps to regulate hormones like cortisol. This disruption creates a vicious feedback loop. Elevated cortisol heightens anxiety, sleep disturbances, while those same physical symptoms demand more energy, causing cortisol spikes to go up even further. So it's a negative feedback loop. So it's a cortisol issue, okay? Menopause, stress, cortisol connection drives key systemic changes. Insomnia, so high cortisol spikes at night when it should be low, suppresses melatonin, leaving you wired but tired. Sound familiar? Weight gain, cortisol elevates blood sugar, slows metabolism, triggers abdominal fat storage. It also causes cravings for sugar and refined carbs. So it's not that you just all of a sudden started to want to eat more crap. It's a hormonal driven problem. High stress hormones cause this. Brain fog and mood. Fluctuating cortisol disrupts cognitive function, worsens the intensity of disruptive symptoms. And then adrenal compensation. So as the ovaries shut down, adrenal glands start to take over by producing smaller amounts of reproductive hormones. However, when the adrenals are constantly working to produce the stress hormones, they cannot sufficiently synthesize estrogen and progesterone precursors. So it stresses the adrenals, and again, it's this negative feedback loop, so you get more and more of these symptoms, right? And who wants those symptoms? Who wants to have insomnia? Who wants to have hot flashes? Who wants to have uncontrolled weight gain or weight loss resistance? Who wants to have terrible cognitive function? Who wants their spouse to have terrible mood swings? I don't. So instead of giving them a synthetic hormone that causes disease and early death, what should we maybe do? Maybe address the cortisol issue. Does that make sense? So how about we do that? So this is how you do it. So you have comprehensive menopausal strategies. And so beyond the hot flash, so you need to address the root hormonal disruption affecting every single system. Specifically, adaptive foundation. So things like ashwagandha. These are adaptogens. This SRI-81. These are evidence-based hormone support that help to regulate these cortisol levels. Adaptogens minimize the negative effects of cortisol up to 75%. So the stress still happens, but your body's able to help regulate those hormones. So you're not getting these terrible symptoms. Anti-inflammatory matrix, fermented turmeric, ginger. These things address inflammation-driving symptoms. So again, you're reducing these inflammation, menopause symptoms. So again, successful support requires comprehensive adaptogenic nutrition. This is the resource. This is the nutrients that's going to help your body deal with the cortisol issues that are driving menopause symptoms. Here's the good news, is that there's no death side effect. These are just natural, healthy nutrition. This is like eating whole food nutrition. Okay? No death side effects. It's just going to help your body adapt to these changing hormonal things. Okay, so I want to talk about the flu shot. Who's ever heard the flu shot is safe and effective? I think that this one's like a no point. I feel like most people recognize how bad the flu shot is these days. So you can see the effectiveness right here. It's kind of crazy. When I was going through and looking at this, so I thought to myself, if I had let's say I had a plumber coming to my house, a guy with this massive plumbing issue, and I was like, hey, so here's the treatment you're going to do to the plumbing issue. How effective is this? And he's like, well, it's probably like 40, maybe 20% effective. Would I probably move forward with that treatment? Not a chance. Not a chance. But that's what they're saying. In fact, so this only goes to like 2019. Here's the last decade. 2014, it was 19% effective. 2015, it was 48% effective. 2016, it was 40%. And then 38%, 29%, 39%, 36%, 30%, 44% effective. And that was what the last decade said. Not to mention the ineffectivity of it, but the effects of the side effects of getting these shots. These shots are pretty dangerous. The number one ingredient in the flu shot is formaldehyde. And what's formaldehyde? What's formaldehyde there for? It's a preservative, but it's also a known carcinogen. Aluminum, heavy metal. It's there to spark your immune system to get a reaction. The problem is aluminum is very bad for you. Sorbate 80 is an adjunct. And when you combine these, they pass the blood-brain barrier. You can get aluminum deposits in the brain. I mean, I've seen things that talk about how if you get these consistent flu shots, that you have like a 10 times increased risk of Alzheimer's due to aluminum deposits in the brain. Again, it's not even effective, and there's dangers to it. And my mom's best friend got Guillain-Barré afterward. It was terrible. I mean, just look at all the side effects. Dermatitis, myositis. Like, these things are really damaging to people. Very damaging. In fact, when you look at like the top lawsuits against vaccine companies, the top 3 or 4 are all from the flu shots. Very devastating. Why do you think?
All doctors are mostly evil?
Listen, that's a hard pill to swallow. I think that a lot of them are good people and they think they're doing really good, but the worst evil is people who think they're doing good. Like in the bad guy movies, the bad guys think they're the good guy. That's a problem. It's the paradigm that they've been raised in. And here's the problem: is the paradigm is their identity. I mean, this research is out there. But if you challenge a medical doctor or someone who's very much on that side of the fence, if you challenge them with this information, it's like an identity issue. Now, most of the people who talk out about, like, say, the flu shot or just vaccines in general, they're all post-medical people. I mean, chiropractors know this just based off of like simple, simple common sense. You can't just inject poison and expect healthy outcomes. But that's just what they were taught. That's the paradigm they're raised in. If you start to challenge their paradigm, it's an identity issue. It's very, very difficult for someone on that side of the fence, especially if their entire well-being is supported by them not knowing it, like their financial stability. Like, they have families to feed. They have a job to do. Their job is just, unfortunately, to practice medicine, which we know has the ability to cause a lot of serious harm and not help people truly get well. So are they evil? Man, I don't really think that they're evil. I think the paradigm that they're, the blinds that are pulled over their eyes are pretty deceitful. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate that, because I know doctors who are really great people. It's just the system they're in. Does that make sense? I mean, there might be some evil ones out there. I don't know. Okay. So, like, speaking on vaccines, and this is a really touchy subject. Yes or yes? Because most people are taught that vaccines like saved us from so many disease processes. True or true? Right? I have this conversation with my dad. Like, but vaccines, like, well, so here's the history, right? So for my history people, so this is the rate at which these diseases were declining. So measles, scarlet fever, typhoid, whooping cough, and diphtheria. So you can see the decline of death rates, and then you can see where the vaccines were implemented. Do you see a common trend? Most of the rates were basically zero before vaccines were even introduced. And when you compare that to the scarlet fever rate of death, it follows the same trend of all these other diseases, and there was no vaccine for that. You guys, so I don't know if you can read this, but right between the 30s and 40s, where like the real big decline really started to occur, do you guys know what happened in the 1930s and 40s? Well, it was things like refrigeration. It was the access to transport food safely and keep things longer. Plus, it was sanitation. That's when sanitation really started to become significantly better. So it was the decrease in, or it was this implementation of sanitation and the ability to keep and get access to better quality food. That's why you see the massive decline in these disease rates, not the vaccinations. In fact, people get the only cases of measles and stuff like that currently are from the MMR shot. So here's another. So when I talk about, like, my goal here today is just help you start to think about it, right? Challenge the belief systems. So here's just a challenge for you. If something happens, like in the medical world, let's say a medical doctor does something and somebody gets injured, that person has the right to sue. Medical malpractice or injury or whatever. Like, I have malpractice insurance. Like it is, so like the Vioxx paid out billions and billions of dollars because of the injury that happened, right? So if you take a drug and something very bad happens to you, you have the ability to sue the drug company for causing an injury, right? It's listed on the label, right? In the 1987 CARES Act, all liability got stripped away from vaccine companies. So vaccine companies are not liable for any damage that they cause. So if they're not liable, so like you would imagine a drug company tries to go through a lot of vigorous studies to make sure the drug is going to help people, not hurt people, because it's a financial thing for them. I mean, again, it's a business move. I need people to use this, take this, and not die, okay? Because if they do, then I'm going to lose money, right? So it makes sense. They should be putting a lot of effort into making sure the drug is safe. Not to mention, it should be helping people, not hurting people, right? So there should be lots of really lengthy experiments to make sure it's safe, okay? But if you remove all financial liability, do you feel like there could be some steps that are skipped in safety analysis? Yes or yes? Absolutely. So, and there's lots and lots of cases. So since this CARES Act has been created, there's been about $10 billion paid out in vaccine injury cases. There's a completely separate court system, by the way. In fact, it's the only other court system separate than our current court system. There's one other court system, and it's for vaccine injuries. It's not even a real court. There's no court. There's no jury. It's just somebody who brings a case to a judge, and they kind of decide if it's warranted a payout or not. Okay, so $10 billion. The drug companies didn't pay a dime. Guess who pays for it? We do. Yeah, it's a taxpayer fund. We pay for injuries induced by vaccines. Again, it's just a thing. Like, what I'm not trying to like say like anti-vax or pro-vax. This is not one of those sort of conversations because that gets into this political blah blah blah. But I just want you to think about it. Like, if it was really safe, why would they not have liability? If there's $10 billion paid out, then it sounds like there's some problems. Now, here's a big difference too. When I was a kid, there was like 13 vaccines. Who knows how many there are today? There's almost 80. 80. And you think about all the preservatives and the chemicals and all the stuff that's in there, right? Which we know are not good. Like, I wouldn't just give you a bunch of thimerosal, which is mercury. That's really, really bad for you. I wouldn't do that. If that was in a supplement, you think it would be on my shelf? No, I mean, it would get pulled off the market because it's dangerous. Do you guys remember Johnson & Johnson had baby food formula that was pulled off the market because it had lead in it? That's kind of crazy, right? Because Johnson & Johnson is a pharmaceutical company. Why would they own baby formula? Why would pharmaceutical companies have financial investments in food companies? Why would big pharma own food companies? Why would they do that? What's the incentive there? Why would companies like, what's the company that controls the weed killer, Monsanto? Why would they own food companies? Why would they do that? Why is that even possible? Why would it be possible for people who work in the FDA to leave the FDA and then work for food companies? Right? Do you think there's like some incentives to let things slide because your new boss is going to be over here and you want a big payout, so I'm going to let things slide or I'm not going to compensate? In fact, most of those FDA rules, those are all those are like legal things. Those are like they have to like decide to tell the FDA what's in it. There's so many other things that are in there that they don't even know. It's voluntary. All this stuff is voluntary. Like the food industry is saying to the FDA, this is what's in it, right? So it's just, again, instill questions. If it was safe, it was good for you, is it beneficial? What's the alternative? What are the health risks, okay? In fact, I mean, just on this, like there's a whistleblower situation where the MMR vaccine specifically, the scientists took a bunch of data in the middle of the laboratory in a trash barrel and burnt it because it was showing an increased risk in autism in black male boys between the ages of like 2 and 5 or something like that. They just destroyed the data. That was a huge deal, right? It's just crazy. So like, again, like we didn't vaccinate our kids, but I did a lot of research. I've sat through so many vaccine seminars. I've read it all. And here's the reality too, is like, so what they're trading for so much of this stuff is like you're trading some disease processes that like really aren't that dangerous for lifelong ailments. I mean, so here's a study on vaccine versus unvaccinated kids. I don't know if you guys can read this stuff, but the vaccinated children were significantly more likely to have than unvaccinated children to have been diagnosed with the following: allergy rhinitis, like again, 0.04% unvaccinated to 10% vaccinated. Other allergies, 22 to 6. Eczema, atopic dermatitis, almost 10 to 3. Learning disabilities, 5.7 to 1. ADD, almost 5 to 1. Again, neurodevelopmental disorders like ADD or ASD, 10 to 3. I mean, autism, significantly higher in children that are vaccinated. Oh, something I want to hit on with the flu stuff. This is crazy. So vitamin D3 is shown 90% effectiveness with preventing the flu. 90%. 90% more able to prevent the flu than the flu shot. Well, I mean, I guess like 19% or 20% or 40% compared to 90%. So I want to talk about that. So, so here's line number 7. Fevers mean you're sick. Does a fever mean you're sick? Is a fever good or bad? See, again, like this is one of those things where like the medical system says fevers are bad because if you have a fever, you should do what? Break the fever. Take something to stop the fever. Is the fever happening? Well, is your body doing something wrong or right? Yeah, you have this amazing innate intelligence that says, oh my gosh, there's viruses in there, there's bacteria, there's something going wrong, and I want to crank the temperature up to kill off the virus and bacteria. Pretty amazing that your body can do that, right? But they say the fever is bad, treat the fever. And so there was a study done in Harvard that said, or University of Maryland, that said that people who broke the fever with Tylenol were sick 3.5 days longer than people who just let the fever burn out. Because again, you're weakening your immune response by breaking the fever, allowing the sickness to prolong an extra 3 days. So a fever doesn't mean you're sick. I mean, a fever isn't a bad thing. Is it uncomfortable? Yes or yes? Yeah. So kind of a rule of thumb though. So if it's under 106, you're pretty safe. After 106, there's probably something like critically going on. Like that's probably a medical intervention. That's a crisis situation. But really like under 106, it just sucks. Now, if my kid had 104 temperature, am I worried? Not really. But do I soothe them? Sure. Cold compresses, maybe an Epsom salt bath, skin on skin, making sure that. So, but here's the difference though. My kid versus someone else's kid. Okay. My kid eats good. My kid gets good rest. My kid avoids toxicity. My kid gets good exercise. My kid gets adjusted. So I know their body is healthy and healthy responses. Their kid, full of sugar, they're eating terrible food, red dye number 5, McDonald's, they're unhealthy. They were vaccinated, they took drugs, they had antibiotics as a kid, they're not getting adjusted. That fever, I don't know if that body's doing the right thing or not. Does that make sense? But again, in the medical system, it's not focused on getting your body healthy and strong to handle sickness. It's just treating you with a bunch of drugs, letting your body get weak, get sick, and more drugs. So chiropractic principle number 25, the forces of innate intelligence, the body's internal organizing intelligence, never injure or destroy the structures in which it works, meaning they are constructive and not destructive. So what's a fever doing? Well, it slows down the pathogen. It boosts white blood cells. It speeds up the metabolic healing. It activates protective proteins. In fact, there was a study done called the daycare study. Daycare prevents childhood cancer study. And it showed that kids that went to daycare that got exposed to a bunch of germs and got sick when they were little had significantly lower levels of cancers like leukemia. Because your immune system is stronger, right? It's like a muscle, right? Kids that live in a bubble with Lysol everywhere are the sickest kids there are versus the kids that play in the dirt, put the dirt in their mouth, that play with the dog, let the dog lick their mouth, share the passy with the dog or the other kids, all the gross things, but that's the immune system building. You want to know why kids put everything in their mouth? I believe it's because it's an intelligent response to try and get their body exposed to germs, to build their immune system, to build their gut, to build their microbiome. Okay? Dr. Josh Axe wrote this book called Eat Dirt. You guys ever seen that? Pretty amazing. Yeah. Okay. So what do you do instead though? Because I don't want you to suffer. I'm not just saying sit there and tough it out. We want to do something, but instead of just taking a flu shot or taking a bunch of drugs or an antibiotic, how about we start to boost the immune system and try to reduce the viral load? How sick you get depends on the viral load. How much viral replication, how many viruses there are is determining how bad you feel, how sick you are. Okay? So we want to boost the immune system and reduce the viral load. So there's specific things that reduce the viral load. Okay? So this is what we do. This is what I have in my, I hate the word medicine cabinet because it's not a medicine cabinet. It's like break the glass, pull it out when it's an emergency type of stuff. This is what we do. So we use immune activation. So Astra Gellus, I don't know how to say it, Shatika, turkey tail provide comprehensive immune system stimulation. Viral interference, so high soluble allergic acid and specific botanical compounds disrupt viral replication. My favorite one is stuff like zinc and vitamin C and vitamin D3. They're known to stop viral replication. In fact, back in the COVID era, The most important thing you do when you started to feel like you were getting sick or you got exposed to the virus is you start to take this step to reduce the viral load so your body had a chance to build the immunity so you didn't really get sick or didn't get that severely sick. Okay? So fermented sage, lemon balm. But this is what we put in our cabinet when it's like, uh-oh, someone's getting sick. This is what we do. Or I'm around someone sick. Someone comes in coughing and sneezing, and I'm adjusting them to boost their immune system. This is what we do. I'm also going to say this. The most important thing you could do when you feel like you're getting sick is to get adjusted. Now that, like, if I said that to the average person out in the community, they'd be like, why would you get adjusted if you were sick? Isn't it for back pain, right? Well, do you guys know that the reason why chiropractors have doctor status is the influence an adjustment has on the immune system? It was the 1918 flu epidemic that was killing millions and millions of people where chiropractic got put on the map. When in that time era, if you got the flu and you went to the medical doctor, your chance of dying from the flu was 1 out of 9. If you went to the chiropractor, it was 1 out of 287. Every time you get adjusted, it boosts your immune system 48%. You get what's called a respiratory burst effect that stimulates your interleukin-2, which activates your CD4 T killer cells to boost your immune system 15 minutes post-adjustment. 48% improvement. In fact, when they look at big studies of long-term wellness chiropractic patients, people who get adjusted regularly have an immune system between 200 and 400% more competent than the average healthy person. Getting adjusted has significantly more influence on your immune system than it does with like chronic arthritic back pain. Now, is it good for back pain? Heck yeah. I have amazing testimonies with people getting results with stuff like back pain. But it doesn't hold a candle to what it does with the immune system, though. Okay? So chiropractic is for back pain. It's not. The purpose of chiropractic is not to resolve a back pain. It's not a back pain therapy. The purpose of an adjustment is to eliminate stress on the nerve system, interfering with the body's ability to self-regulate and heal. You guys know that the central nerve system, the brain spinal cord, is the master coordinator. Your nerve system is what coordinates every single function of physiology. So for your heart to beat, your lungs to breathe, to digest food, to heal a cut on the arm, or even for your immune system to activate and fight off viruses, it's the nerve system's job to gather information of what's happening in the body and redirect or change or increase or slow down every single chemical reaction in the entire body. And we know that because if we took scissors and cut like all the nerves that go to the heart, like what would instantly happen to that person? Would they live or not live? Yeah, if we cut the nerve to the heart, instantly the heart's going to turn off. Yes or yes? Is that a belief or is that a fact? That's just a law of anatomy. Is there one doctor in the entire world that would disagree with that statement? No, that's basic anatomy. I could ask that question to a bunch of fourth graders and they would say, yeah, you cut the nerve to the heart, heart's probably not going to work very good or at all, right? Okay, so that is a law. Nerve system controls function of the organ. If you eliminate the communication, like cut the nerve, the organ's going to turn off. Fact. Now, if we scale that back, not a cut nerve, let's say something shifts out of alignment. One of the vertebrae, the job of the spine is to protect the spinal cord and brainstem and the nerve roots. If something just shifts out of alignment, just a tiny bit, from slips, fall, or posture, birth process, birth trauma, C-section, suction cup, gosh dang, my kids, so I have 10-year-old, 4-year-olds, and a 2-year-old boy almost. Dude, they fall and wreck themselves all the time. Like, I'm talking like one of my kids rolled off the bed real bad when they were little. Just like big old black eye, like all sorts of stuff, like bicycle accidents. Oh my gosh, one of my twins, like they were learning bicycles with their training wheels, and we have a kind of a driveway that turns and goes down a hill, and like she was turning and like went off the grass, and like now she didn't like wreck that bad, but it was more funny than injury. But like she did like fall off her bike. Who fell off their bike as a kid? I was a pretty gnarly bike racks, but I was crazy, right? So you imagine like all these potential things that might create a spinal misalignment. In fact, it's not really injuries that cause subluxations or misalignments these days, it's the chronic postural stresses. That's the biggest problem that we see, chronic postural stresses, which is stuff like this, or this, right? Who does this? And I'm not even talking about you all here, I'm talking about who at home? Kids, right? The younger generation. So the myth is that chiropractic is for back pain. It's not. It really has nothing to do with back pain. If someone comes in and we're analyzing their subluxations, like if there's a misalignment and it's putting stress on a joint or creating damage in a joint or increasing the rate at which that joint wears itself down, that could cause problems, whether currently or future, or if there's a misalignment that's stressing the nerve system going to their heart, even though they don't have your heart symptoms, the job is to adjust that, try to correct that subluxation. Does that make sense? Who should have that done? I mean, doesn't it make sense that like everybody should have their spinal nervous system evaluated pretty regularly to make sure there's no interference in the nervous system that can cause health issues? Like that makes plenty of sense to me. But that's just not, I mean, your medical doctor never said, hey, you should go to a chiropractor. Oh, your kid was born, you should probably take him to the chiropractor. Now, I'll be the first to admit, there's a lot of like bad chiropractors out there. Just like there's a bunch of bad dentists out there, right? The problem is if you run across a bad dentist and you don't like your dentist, what do? You get a new dentist. Yeah? If someone has a bad experience with a chiropractor, they just, chiropractor is not for me, right? It's just 100% like they're done, right? It's unfortunate. You want to know the real reason why chiropractic is known for back pain and not like what I'm talking about? It's insurance. Chiropractors fought so damn hard to get accepted and to have insurance pay. And so what the AMA and the powers that be did was they said, we will pay for back pain. We'll pay for musculoskeletal dysfunction. We'll pay for headaches. We'll pay for sciatica. And so guess what all the marketing came about for chiropractors? Back pain. It was another really good step that the medical paradigm created to pigeonhole chiropractic into pain, back pain. Before that, chiropractic was about restoring nervous system function, and the number one people seeking out chiropractic care were chronic autoimmune issues and colds, viral infections. In fact, the first chiropractic adjustment restored someone's hearing. Kind of a crazy story, I'm not going to go into it. Chiropractic does not cure hearing. I want everybody to know that. But if you have a subluxation that's affecting your ear function, then it will improve your hearing. I mean, I have people who throw away their glasses, improve the eyesight. My eyesight went from a negative 2.5 to a negative 1.5 when I started getting adjusted by a doctor, not a student. Okay? Now, do all patients lose their glasses? No, but maybe your subluxations are not influencing your eyes, right? Again, chiropractic is the only non-therapeutic healing art. An adjustment is not designed to cure something. It's designed to improve your nervous system's ability to regulate, control function. If that function is creating a symptom, then yeah, that symptom will probably go away. It's amazing. I have so many testimonies of so many different things, and chiropractic across the board is incredible, and some miracle testimonies that you hear, but it's just because it's improving your body's ability to function and heal, self-regulate. So that's really what chiropractic is. It's a reduction of subluxation. But I want to talk about this specifically, and then I'm going to let you guys go. And I always go over a little bit. Does everybody, can you give me 5 more minutes? Is that cool? Okay. So this is the most common type of subluxation complex that we see, and it's called the loss of curvature in your neck, or text neck syndrome. Anybody heard of text neck? If you've been a patient of mine, I talk a lot about it. What's the curve really called? What do I call the curve in the neck? It's called the arc of life. And when someone has forward head posture or loss of curvature, it stretches the spinal cord. And I was doing some research this morning, and some of the stuff that I'm telling you is very difficult to find, and you will not find it on Google. Okay? You gotta go off the grid to look at some of this stuff, because some of the powers that be have influence on search engines. True or true? Okay. So this, however, is straight up on Google, and I was amazed at what you could find, that they're not hiding. Because I asked Google, what would happen if someone has a loss of cervical curve? If they have this sort of x-ray, what happens? Well, it stretches the spinal cord somewhere between 5 and 7 centimeters. So if I took a rubber band and I stretched it 5 or 7 centimeters, it's going to get thinner, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's thinning the cord. When you have that sort of tension in the cord, it cuts off blood supply to the nerve system. So if you cut off blood supply to an area of the body, does the liver die? It dies. Chronic tension creates demyelination, so it thins the myelin sheath. And so now it is not an acute boom, you have this loss of curvature, you have a death. It is a slow progress. So you have interference and damage on your nerve system. And so if we're damaging the nerve system over time, do you build health or disease? Do you move toward health or more toward death? So a subluxation, a loss of cervical curve, is not an acute issue, but it's a slow progress to disease and death. Every article talks about the damaging effects, the increased rates in mortality, coronary heart disease, increase in lung dysfunction, increase in uterine or bladder issues. I actually didn't know the relationship, and I don't talk a ton about bladder issues and cervical curve, but that was one of the top things that showed up. all these different problems with this loss of curvature shorten your quality of life and lifespan. That is it, period. So then I typed in, what about chiropractors treating this? And first off, they said chiropractors don't fix cervical curves. Well, then I said, well, what about corrective chiropractors? And it was like, oh yeah, those guys, they definitely do. But that only makes 5% of chiropractors. Only 5% of chiropractors do what we do, which is spinal corrective care, okay? Now, I think the neurotonal stuff on the other side, like that's very different, but for this conversation, we're talking about specifically about that curve in the neck, okay? So, most chiropractors, 95%, do not correct curves. It is, where does it hurt? Let's crack it, feel better, I'll bill your insurance for 5 or 6 visits, you feel better, then you're done, come back and see me when it hurts. Yes or yes?
Yes.
Okay. If you're going to a chiropractor who's analyzing your subluxations, analyzing neurotonal damage, traction, distortion, death in the nerve system, my goal is to correct that. What your symptoms are kind of just the side effect of you getting better. Does that make sense? But the goal should be to correct this. So then I asked, what about corrective care chiropractors? And what it said was amazing. I was very happy to read all the great things it was saying about improvements in the science and the research, because I know analytic data, I see it all the time. I see correction happen, I see life change. But it's out there, people do it, people know it. Like here's an example. So what's happening to your spinal cord? Well, it's healing. What's happening to your body? It's healing. No more injections, no more migraines, no more thyroid medication. Now, did I cure her thyroid? No, I did not. Did I cure her migraines? No, I did not. What did we do? We just took damaging pressure off the nerve system and allowed the body to function like it was designed to. Like, the power that made the body heals the body, and happens no other way. So these are just like simple side effects or symptoms that can occur from someone having subluxation. One of the things I thought was really interesting, and I wasn't going to go into this, but I want to do this because I think it's insanely powerful. So I asked the question, why would a insurance company pay indefinitely for a medication to treat the blood pressure, the heart arrhythmias, all the disease that can cause from this damage? Why would the insurance companies pay forever for those medications, but they won't cover chiropractic care? And you know what the answer was? Business. It was because the average person only keeps their health insurance for 5 years. And it's cheaper to pay drugs than it is to pay for a correction, because eventually you're not going to be on their insurance and you're going to be on Medicaid or Medicare. Or you're going to be on a different insurance. So they didn't want to pay a couple $1,000s to go through a 3 or 6 month corrective protocol, but they'll pay whatever to put you on a drug for the rest of your life. It was just a financial thing. They don't want to pay the upfront cost. That is why. They will not pay for corrective chiropractic care because it just costs too much. They'd rather pay for you to take blood pressure medications until you're on Medicare or deal with the disease. Isn't that insane? Even just the basic searches said that is destroying life, causing disease. This is healing life, helping disease heal, getting people truly healthy and well, not taking medications, not getting surgeries, but yet they're not going to pay for that. Boggles my mind. But here's the other part of it. Like, I get really mad when my car insurance doesn't pay for my oil change. I get really mad that my house insurance doesn't pay for my house upkeep. I get really mad about a lot of insurances. Like, I'm really mad that my liability insurance didn't pay to replace the $15,000 AC unit I had to replace on the roof. Really mad about that. But is anybody surprised that those things don't pay for those things? No. So should we be surprised that our health insurance doesn't pay for us to get healthy? No, it's a disease management. It's part of the paradigm, right? So these are symptoms. And I know the vast majority of you guys are patients. If you're not a patient, these are warning signs that you have subluxation. If you've never had an x-ray, I'm going to highly encourage you to set yourself up for an initial appointment. Now, if you were to go to a medical doctor and get an exam, x-rays, thermal imaging, nerve scans, orthopedic testing at the medical clinic, what do you think that would cost someone? Yeah, thousands and thousands of dollars. Now, if they could find the cause of the damage to the disease and correct that, would it be worth thousands of bucks? Well, yeah, I mean, disease is like really, really expensive. In our office, it's around $300 to do the scans, x-rays, consultations, report of findings. When someone comes to an event like this, or we have a new patient referral, it's $37. If you want to take advantage of a $37 payment to get an evaluation, exam, and x-rays to see if you have subluxation, stress, or damage of your nerve system, and if there's an opportunity to correct it without drug and surgery, please take advantage of that. Now, most of you are patients, and so you guys already know, you're already here, you're already getting adjusted, but how many people do you know that are not getting adjusted by a corrective care chiropractor? Raise your hand if you know someone that you love, that you want to be healthy, that's not getting adjusted by a corrective care chiropractor. I want to play this video for you guys real quick.
Caught at the bottom of a moving escalator at a busy T station, and it took more than 20 minutes before any help arrived. It happened in late February here at the Davis station in Somerville. Video the Evanston investigators obtained shows Stephen McCluskey getting onto the escalator here at about 5 in the morning. At the bottom of the escalator, he then stumbles and falls. The 40-year-old's clothes were pulled inside the escalator, which prevented him from getting up. The video then shows a procession of T-riders taking the steps and walking by Stephen. Some of them briefly stop and appear like they try to help. Others walk by with even barely glance. It wasn't until 22 minutes later that you see a T employee appear in the frame and walk up and hit the emergency stop button. When first responders arrived, they found Stephen had no pulse. His clothing had been pulled so tight that it was cutting off the airway in his throat, and it ended up taking roughly a half an hour before they were able to free him from the escalator and take him out to an ambulance on a stretcher. Stephen's sister and mother sat down with us to talk about their family's loss.
I want to make sure that, there's somebody held, somebody or something held accountable for the fact that my brother wasn't protected in a public space.
They treated him like he didn't exist. Nobody cared, nobody stopped. Nobody took the time to see, to help, to make sure he was okay. If somebody took that minute, he would be here today.
Here's the bit.
So, we all know that there's a lot of people out there that are sick and suffering and praying for answers. And people are dying because they don't know the truth. They don't know what options they have. They don't understand the devastating effects of vaccines or medications, or that there's alternatives to even choose to. I mean, how many people know chiropractic like we talked about it today? But that's just like this guy on the elevator. Like, we have all the potential to help reach someone and teach someone something different so they don't end up with all the results that the current people are ending up with. And so if you're a guest, I want you to get signed up. You can fill out this stress survey. Shannon's over here at the front. She's gonna kind of help you get set up with that initial schedule. And again, you'll get that new patient $37 discount. I want every single one of you guys to take as many of these cards as you want. These are our new patient specials. Again, it has a $37 new patient special as a QR code. And then just talk to someone that you love, that you want to pull out of that medical paradigm and get them in a true healthcare system and potentially save their life. They can take advantage of the discount. Again, $37 of value, their exam and x-rays. Get part of the culture. Get it in, get in these sort of seminars, these workshops where you teach them how to be healthy, because people are dying. Someone could have easily saved that person, but they just didn't. Every single one of you has someone who's moving toward sickness and disease, medical bankruptcy, that it could easily be a, hey, come to this next workshop. Hey, come with me to this next event. Here, you need to go check this guy out. Hey, maybe instead of taking all those drugs, instead of maybe going and talking to a surgeon, maybe come just hear what this office has to say. And there's an opportunity for us to change the way that people view and manage the healthcare, save them from drug and surgery. Guys, if you guys need to get those resources, make sure you take advantage of the discounts. What's the discount?
20%.
20% off. So again, 20% off. If you want to take advantage of the discounts, please get the resources that you want. There's other, I think there's other stuff on sale. But what is the other stuff?
All supplements.
Oh, all supplements are 20% off? Dang. There they're getting you. Okay. So Ramsey, she's gonna help you guys with the supplementation stuff. Shannon's gonna help you guys set up for that initial appointment. I really appreciate you guys coming to the office today. I know I went over a lot of it, but you can tell I am extremely passionate about saving lives in our community. And again, hopefully you had a lot of learning and implement some of what we talked about. Okay, all right guys, see you later.